Hey y'all, aloha from Maui. I'm glad to be with you. Thank you for tuning in live or by raw by re broadcast. And this has become a series. I'm excited to be with you today. I am continuing to read to you from my book, The Art of Spiritual Leadership: 40 Laws to Transform Your Life and the World. And of course, you can get the book through any of the normal book vendors in hardcover, soft cover. You can get the Kindle book. It's very inexpensive intentionally. You can get the audiobook from Audible. So why am I doing this? Because it gives me a chance to hang out with y'all, to answer any questions, and to tell a little bit of the backstory or the stories behind the stories that sometimes pop up. So I will read and occasionally pause. And if you have comments or questions, please pop them in. I won't necessarily see it in the moment, though I will stop reading at times, look up and respond. And if it's by rebroadcast, I will gladly respond to your comments or questions that way too. So last week, we finished on page 40, and that means we are in chapter 1, which is called Braveheart, Waterways, and Facing Fear. And we had just come through a story about the greatest, wisest king in all of Spain years gone by. And we talked about spiritual axiom number 3: wise is as wise does. And we just got up to spiritual axiom number 4: environment counts. Who we surround ourselves with counts. And we finished that section with a quotation from one of my heroes, Ram Dass, who said, "We are all just walking each other home." So now, levels of engagement: how to read or listen to this book. When I lived in Bali, I used to take my daughter Zeta to an amusement park called Waterbomb. I was reluctant to go the first time. I'd lived in Bali for years and seen firsthand the tendency to cut corners in favor of faster and cheaper. When I finally viewed the tall, steep water slides, I feared for our safety. It turns out, though, that the construction was sound and the rides fantastically fun. It became a regular spot for us for birthday parties and special events. We once took our entire yoga staff. It was delightful to see the Balinese yoga center staff. Sorry. It was delightful to see the Balinese staff splashing and playing all day together with the Westerners, who were mostly in teaching and management positions. One of my favorite discoveries at Waterbomb is a ride called the Lazy River. 2 or 3 people can drape themselves over the massive inner tubes and, just like you'd guess, simply float through the winding river all the way around the park. It is particularly balancing after the heart and adrenaline pumping action of the more raucous rides. Some people never go on the lazy river, and some find the Python and Green Viper too extreme. As a teacher and coach, I often recommend that people do things differently than they usually would. There's wisdom in the simple formula that if we keep doing the things we've always done, we keep getting the results we've always got. As your guide on the ride of this book, I encourage you sometimes to choose the lazy river approach. For much of my own life, I would have scoffed at that. I came to yoga from years of participating in competitive judo. I thought yoga was weak, right up until I got into it and found out how quote bad I was at it and how challenging it can actually be. For those of you who are always pushing, achieving, and going for more, the lazy river approach might be just what you need now. In Bali, I also loved how easy it was to access incredible snorkeling. Again, with my daughter, We took many trips to parts of the island where living coral reefs and even a few shipwrecks housed unbelievably beautiful and diverse marine life. Excuse me a moment. Snorkeling was perfect for Zeta, already by the time she was 5 years old. With fins and a life preserver, she was both safe and confident. Once you learn to seal the mask to your face so water doesn't leak in and breathe through the snorkel, you can have the extraordinary experience of being immersed in the underwater world for extended periods. It is an exceptional experience to cut yourself off from the world of air and the sound that lies above the water, the silence that reigns underwater, combined with the proximity of the purple, green, yellow, orange, the stripes, polka dotted, pointy, or puffy, the tiny to massive creatures, is an experience well beyond looking at the same thing in books, movies, or even an aquarium. Many years ago, my girlfriend at the time, Amy, and I went snorkeling in the Florida Keys. Even though the water was rough, our captain assured us that once we were in the water snorkeling, the sea's turmoil wouldn't bother us. By the time the captain had found our destination and cut the engine, we were a little queasy from the bouncy ride to get there. I was eager to swim away from the boat and turn my attention to the underwater world. For Amy, though, once in the water, the rough seas made her nausea worse, leading her to hold fast to the boat. I was treading water nearby. Indeed, the captain was right when he had advised us that we would feel better once we got in the water. I was not bouncing and roiling like the boat was. Amy, however, gripping onto the boat, was virtually riding a bucking bronco. Ironically, the fear that kept her hand clinging to the side of the boat also tethered her to what was making her sick and afraid in the first place. I was encouraging her to let go. The captain of the boat was telling her she'd be fine. Later, Amy shared with me that she had known that we were right, but she just couldn't get her fingers to cooperate. Have you ever experienced something like that? Finally, it came to me to swim back to her. Sure enough, as soon as I offered my hand, she grabbed it and let go of the boat. We had a magical snorkeling adventure from then on, and we both treasure that memory as one full of life wisdom we are still learning to apply. Please know, beloved listener, that I will be holding your hand the whole way through our experience together. We'll move through some territory that might be challenging. I'll invite you to look inside yourself in ways that you may never have done before. I invite you to consider taking the snorkeler approach, which means going more in depth than merely reading the words. It means writing in your journal, responding to some of the questions I ask. Exercise opportunities will arise. So, yes, please do try this at home. Of course, you can sometimes follow the lazy river approach and sometimes swim as a snorkeler would. You always get to choose. Naturally, you'll tend to get more out of this experience by jumping in, getting your face under the water, and even facing some fears that might arise. Spiritual Leadership Axiom 5. Fear affixes us to that which hurts. In Bali, I also had my first experience in scuba. At the end of one of our teacher trainings, a group of trainees chipped in and bought me some lessons. When I was a kid, I'd always thought that scuba diving looked cool, and I loved watching films of Jacques Cousteau, and yet I never felt motivated to try it on my own. The gift made the difference. It's true that, like many things of value, scuba diving has a significant learning curve. Even in Bali, with the relaxed safety standards, I wouldn't have my first skydiving experience there. A lot of learning and preparation was required before you were allowed to dive down into the depths. Was it worth it? Absolutely. I quickly moved through my initial lessons, bought more, and received my first level diver's certificate. Nothing in the world is quite like gliding through the water, down into darker realms, with the surface seeming so far away. Ascending and descending through the use of my breath was rapturous, and gently gliding through a school of fusilier fish is an experience like no other. Not only does diving require learning and preparation, gear, and financial investment, it also entails overcoming fear far beyond what snorkeling does. My teacher, Raphael, a Frenchman who loved the underwater world, taught me to always maintain some trepidation, to value it. He told me about divers who had ignored safety precautions and been severely hurt. Trying to be fearless is foolish, futile, and frustrating. We are human and wired for survival. Fear is an essential part of our survival system. Don't get me wrong, fear can be paralyzing and undermining, but our goal is to develop a strong relationship with fear. Fear is a miserable master, yet it can be a helpful servant. On the path of awakening, mastering fear is an essential step. We can learn from it and appreciate it since it's always trying to keep us safe. It's up to us whether we heed its warnings or move forward anyway. One of my favorite exercises that I use in groups, usually on the first day of an event, gives participants an immediate and palpable understanding of how our brains are wired for survival. Part of what makes these events so powerful is that we always create a high level of trust. The participants have paid a significant amount of money, traveled, and taken time away from work or family to attend the workshops. They are motivated by their desire for change, moving out of pain and creating transformation. They've got skin in the game. You might already be deepening your awareness of what compelled you to pick up this book. What motivated you? Whatever it is, I encourage you to set your sights high. What if you could wave a magic wand so that your life would be different by the time you reach the end of this book? What would you want your life to look and feel like? Back to day one of the event, people already know that we're going to do some challenging activity as the culmination of our first day together. They understand that a major theme of our first day is developing their powerful relationship with fear. So, as part of the preparation, midway through the first day, we set up the room for an exercise. Since all of my events are in some way about helping people create vibrant lives, it's not a stretch when we set up a video camera on a tripod and tell everyone that we're going to film each person introducing themselves. We also instruct them to communicate what they are passionate about. These days, that's not as scary as it used to be, so I've taken to adding that we're going to stream the video live. By this time, many people are getting nervous. Of course, there are some, the deep diver types, who are rubbing their hands together, ready to jump right in. They are excited to go first. There are others, though, who are already dreading it. Everyone knows that public speaking is the number one fear in the world. And, of course, if you add the camera and the idea that it will be streaming, it's triply scary. So I do my best to build up the tension, adding pressure by saying how important it is to be able to speak well about our passions and articulate what we stand for. Then, when we are about to start the filming, I ask everyone to close their eyes and tune into their bodies and minds and notice their thoughts and sensations. In the sharing that comes after they open their eyes, people report that their hearts were racing, their palms became sweaty, and their minds were pounding with what they should say. Fears of sounding stupid or lame kept arising inside them. Then, as you've already guessed, I tell them that this itself was the exercise. It's so shocking how much fear we can experience just through our imaginations. Mark Twain said, I've worried about a great many things in life, most of which never came to pass. In what ways have you done the same? Is it a snake or is it a stick? We all would do well to awaken an observer part of ourselves, the witness who can watch the fear and its symptoms. When we can observe the fear, we intuitively know that it's not us. See, that's usually the trouble with fear. It's so pressing and consuming that we think it is us rather than something passing through us. In reality, it's merely the animal part of ourselves trying to protect ourselves. Our ancient ancestors were right to be concerned that a mastodon might trample them. Fear was a more useful companion back then. I have yet to hear of a death caused by video recording. Most of what fear is trying to protect us from is no longer a real threat unless we live in a war zone. Yoga classes are excellent laboratories for experimenting with fear. When we do something that frightens us, public speaking, a headstand, or even some of the snorkeling and deep dive opportunities in this book, we learn that we are perfectly safe, even though fear may make itself felt. I will teach you some powerful tools here that will help you overcome fear when it really counts. Speaking into a camera or standing on your head won't necessarily make much of an immediate difference in your life. Yet, some of the exercises and experiments in these pages can. Spiritual Leadership Axiom 6: Life begins where our comfort zone ends. And I will pause for a moment because I see there is a comment. And Holly, thank you for chiming in. Woohoo! All right, awesome. So, where are we? 17 minutes in. I'll read one last little section. Again, that last spiritual leadership axiom: life begins where our comfort zone ends. At 19 months old, Helen Keller developed a severe illness that left her deaf and blind. She went on to inspire millions as an author, activist, and lecturer. I tell you, all of that to help you fully appreciate the following words she wrote. Security is mostly a superstition. It does not exist in nature, nor do the children of men as a whole experience it. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. Life is a daring adventure or nothing. To keep our faces toward change and behave like free spirits in the presence of fate is strength and undefeatable. So powerful, those words. Digging a little deeper, we can discern that life is both comfort and adventure. We are at least two beings. One part of us is human animal, survival oriented, ruled by fear and ever seeking safety and comfort. For this part, any change, even one that promises to move us out of the swamps of our lives toward greener pastures, is dangerous. Some call it ego or lower self. It's important to know that this human animal part of ourselves is always both part of us and working for us. Fighting it never works and only strengthens it. The other part that we might call the human spirit. Two, the other part we might call the human spirit. It seeks adventure, transformation, and freedom. That part sneers at fear and jumps from the diving board, trapeze, or airplane. It often gets especially resolute right at New Year's, proclaiming, "From now on, I will." That part is always working for us. We are learning how to bring these distinct parts of us to collaborate and cooperate. Spiritual Leadership Axiom 7: both and. And I believe that is a good pausing point for us. Both and is such a powerful, powerful concept. All right. And Brian chimed in. Hello, Brian. Thanks for chiming in. Awesome. So, question for y'all as we pause for today. If you tune in, if you get to this point, What does both and mean to you? We often think it's either this or it's that. One of my favorite lessons from Zen many, many years ago, story that says, at the gates of heaven, there are two pillars. One is marked with healing, and that one seems fairly obvious. Okay, healing. Yeah, we need healing. The other was paradox. And what that means is for all of us, as we move forward, as we evolve, as we enter heaven on earth, part of our entrance fee is our ability to handle paradox, to handle both and, to be able to hold within ourselves things that seem like they are opposite or seem like they are incompatible. Yet everything is perfect, everything is God, if we are able to see it as such. Both the human animal and the human spirit are working for us. It's our job to be the symphony director and to balance them out, to give them their roles. All right, y'all, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, any comments or questions? Awesome. I will check back periodically. Thanks for tuning in. Be back next week to go deeper into both and. Aloha.